Nau mai ki tēnei puni I pāho. Welcome back to this episode of Tū Kapu Tū Kōrero. Join Ari and I as we navigate love and life as partners and our wawata, our dreams for language within the home. In episode 3, we dive more into our relationship and how the language dreams of a couple can really make or break that relationship. We share some stories about events we've been to together that have marked a language learning curve for us, and we talk a little about the power dynamics that we think work for us when it comes to communicating our language dreams to our partners. We don't cover everything here because there's just so much to talk about, and we're going to revisit this more in episode 7. We've been working with the phrase nau mai ki tēnei whare, welcome to our place, come on in. In this epi, you'll hear that phrase again, but we're going to add something new. We're going to add in a new word, kuhu. Kuhu mai ki tēnei whare, come on in to our house. It's a handy phrase you can use to really welcome people in to enter your whare. Don't forget, we're using these phrases in different ways too, like at the start of our episodes. Nau mai ki tēnei puni I pāho, welcome to this podcast episode. So, kuhu mai ki tēnei whare, come on into our whare and take a seat. Let us make you a kapa. It's time to find out if we're tū kapu tū kōrero. Do we want to talk about...
How we met?
We talk a lot about, in this podcast, about being a teacher-student type relationship, but not wanting that to be our relationship, you know? Like, so I'm a teacher, you're learning languages. Actually, we're both learning languages, but we don't want that to become part of our relationship. But a lot of what we talk about is the fact that, like, we're scared about that. Because I'm scared about that. A teacher and a student swipe right on each other because we did swipe right on each other on a dating app.
Yep.
But not because you were my student. If you had seen me and I was your teacher, would you have swiped right? You wouldn't have, eh?
Yeah, probably would have.
Would you have? Would you have been like, gonna get
Yeah,
in with
but
my teacher?
after I'd finished in your class, that's weird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Okay, so after we met and you found out that I was like in the real space and blah, 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 did you make any assumptions about me? And if so, what might have you assumed? And there's no wrong answers.
I remember quite clearly the first time you raised it with me. I had messaged you like, what are you up to? And you're like, oh, I'm at Te Papa with my students. And I was like, okay, are you a teacher? And in my mind I was thinking, oh, primary or college. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm a lecturer at Vic. And then I panicked because I was like, oh, what do you teach? Oh, I teach that. And then I freaked out because I was like, oh no, like he's gonna probably ask, like, we're gonna have the chat, like, are you Māori? We'll do the kazi check. We'll and then you'll want to know, I felt like you would test me, like how much I knew and that I would fail this test. Like I just had in my mind that, oh, he's gonna find out how little I know, not only about the language, but about my Māori side. And he's going to be disappointed and he's not going to want to be with me, or it's not going to go anywhere. And it wasn't like that.
Why do you think that was your like initial feeling? Or because I think a lot of couples would have been through this and they'll still be living in little parts of this. Like, why did you think you thought that? Did I say that right?
Why did I think I thought? No.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think because I grew up not in the language space, it felt very separate to my life, and I didn't even know where the door was to get there. So it felt very, I felt excluded from that.
So
That's how I felt at the time. But to know you,
getting to know you,
you're all right.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe because I didn't know any other,
That's fair though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
or the negative thoughts that I'd had about myself, I instantly thought you'd feel like too, I think.
Do you think that's like a general vibe that Māori speakers give off, or do you think that's like a just a something that we maybe like a presumption that we jump to by ourselves?
I think so, and I base that on a lot of conversations that I've had with friends and family that still have that fear, and that some of them are even older than I am and have just never been able to get past that or work through those fears and those feelings. And that's okay, like everyone has to process it in their own way and in their own time. It's kind of a fear that I've been surrounded by because no one in my space growing up had the language. It was all people that were either had really bad experiences that stopped them from learning, or they didn't feel like they had any opportunity around them to learn.
I remember when I first started learning Māori, I quite literally thought I was the only Māori person who couldn't. I just assumed every other Māori person could speak te reo. And so I just assumed that I was the only one that couldn't. And so in my world, everybody except me could, and so that's why I was asking. I was interested to know what you thought, because I thought everyone could. And so when I met you, I had learnt by then that I'm part of a lot of people, the bulk of us, the majority of us, who are in some, somewhere along the continuum of learning to speak Māori.
How long did you have that thinking?
I got corrected on that in the first class, because my very
that's
first
good.
class, I walked in and I was like, whoa, everybody is Māori. There were people who were browner than me and older than me, and it was actually really comforting. Like, there were other people in class who didn't know the name of their iwi, or hadn't been to their marae before, and that was awesome in a way, because I learnt through that first class that what I was experiencing was a really typical experience, the fact that I felt all those things, and so that was really comforting. There were hard parts too, like when you sit in that group of those people, you start to experience group induced mamai and pain and what we might call language trauma. There were good parts about that too, and one of them was like, oh, there are people here who can't speak Māori too, and that means it's okay.
Did you feel like a big weight was lifted off your shoulders in that first class then?
Yeah.
If that's the realization you came to?
Yeah, it was like that part of it, that was a really welcoming aspect, to be able to know that was okay, that I was 18, didn't speak Māori, didn't know any of that stuff. It did mean that when I met you, I didn't make any assumptions about your Māori language, but it did make me really curious. Like, I wanted to know about your language experience, like I wanted to know about your upbringing and your experience with tokelao as well. I wanted to know more. And sometimes, I was worried about asking you in some respects, because I wanted to know, but I wanted to know to get to know you, and I wanted to know for my own curiosity, but I also didn't want to start asking you questions and then have you think that they're more loaded than that. Like I was testing you, or I wanted to
Which was my fear.
examine your upbringing to see if it met my linguistic,
Yeah.
you know, if it made the taumata, because other people had asked me those things in my life, and I didn't want to. But I was genuinely curious. Like I wanted to know all about, you know, you, and because I thought you were all right.
You're just two all right people. Getting back to your first experience in the classroom, you said that you'd always thought you were the only Māori that couldn't speak Māori.
Fully.
Is that to say that growing up, that maybe every Māori you came across, was that your assumption that they knew, or did they already have it and that kind of like influenced your thinking?
Such a good question. At the time, I honestly thought everyone could and just didn't around me. So I made that assumption in my own head. And so I did that all through my childhood and all through my teenage years, like any of my friends. I just assumed that they were speaking English because I couldn't speak Māori. Some of them could speak Māori, but not all of them. And my other exposure had been in the odd family occasion where I'd been somewhere and everyone around me was speaking te reo, like the whole, you know, and I was like, whoa. And so, I couldn't partake in those conversations. And at the time, I felt, you know, like kind of like real curious. I'd be like listening, like that's, like I wonder what they're talking about.
Yeah, that word comes up a lot. I
Yeah,
wonder what that one word is.
Yeah, I never felt excluded or anything like that.
Oh,
but
that's good.
But that's lucky, I think, that I felt that way, and that was just by coincidence. I didn't feel excluded. I think a lot of people do feel excluded when they're involved in situations where another language is being spoken. As I've gotten older and more like trained in my area of research and that, I know that actually the feeling of exclusion is partly taught to us by colonization, because you know, like in like Pākehā society, if Pākehā people can't understand, they quite often assume they're being talked about. And so a lot of those feelings that we feel when we feel excluded in Māori settings, some of that is taught to us by colonization. And if we're like decolonizing ourselves, then we start to understand that actually we don't have to understand every conversation, and we don't need to have that accommodation. That gets mixed in with the language trauma feeling of I can't speak my language. So those two things like interconnect, and that's what makes like it's a really complex thing. What was the first scary language occasion you encountered with me, or has there been one?
One that comes to mind, and it might not be the first one, was the closing of the marae, because I met a lot of your work friends and a lot of people in the Māori space. Or was it like 4 o'clock in the morning?
It was early.
It was a lot of Māori there. And it was like kind of dark, and I just remember you pulling me through this big crowd of people on the side of the street by the bus stops, and you kept getting stopped by people, and you'd say in te reo, oh, this is my partner, and then I'd say hello to them, and then everyone was speaking te reo around me, and I remember feeling quite nervous because it was the first time I was meeting a lot of people that I'd only heard you talk about, but it was like finally meeting them in person, and I didn't know how much they knew about me, but my one thing was like, I don't know if they know that I can't really speak te reo. So that made me feel really nervous, and some people spoke to me, but it was very like easy what they said, which was great, but I answered them in English, and I remember feeling like a bit gutted that I answered in English. But the cool thing about whenever I've been in those spaces with you is that you always make me feel included. And I feel a lot better about it now, and because I've met a lot of those people already, and they know where I'm at, and they're really cool about it.
I remember from that day, I can't remember what my job was, but I had a job to do, that day.
You were corralling people.
And I remember doing a really terrible job of it. But part of the reason that I was not like fully focused is because I remember thinking, for that particular occasion, like, oh, I need to make sure that like Ari's linguistically okay. And that's something that I noticed that you also do for me in tokelao settings. And especially when I'm being talked about, because that quite often happens, like with your elders, they'll be like, who's there? And I know that they're asking about me, and you're always really good at like shepherding the conversation so that I'm around and can participate.
You always say maloni though, and then they're like, ooh.
Ooh, you can say it as one word.
No, you're pretty good.
I always get the ēnei.
And what do you say?
What did I say last time? That's pretty much all I can do. And then I tried something last time, and I said kokoela. I don't even know if that's right.
Did they answer you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's all right. And then
I don't know if it's right.
And then you got a really high honour in the tokelao community. You got given a toke name, and you got a tokelao nickname. I don't even have a nickname.
Yeah. That was actually really cool. That
So,
was
yeah.
a beautiful moment. Getting back to the scary thing, do you still feel like that? Like if we were to go to another marae closing tomorrow, 4 o'clock in the morning, 400 Māori running around, would you still feel that kind of?
Probably not as bad, but I feel very linguistically safe with you, because I think even though you were really busy that day, you still made sure I was with people that I kind of already knew. But a lot of people came and introduced themselves anyway when they heard that I was your partner, like your colleagues and things like that. I'm always nervous around new people, even if it's not even a language thing, it's just meeting new people. But if I was with you, I would feel fine.
Would it be different if, like, a mate showed up to the house here and I was like, oh, kia ora, kuhu mai ki te whare, if I was just like that kind of thing, informal as it's your house, so you're the power, would it feel different? Would you feel more comfortable, or is it not the context that changes things for you?
Yes, I think a lot of those elements come into play. Like, you've had friends come over that can speak te reo, and you guys have had me in conversations, and I'm just sitting there, and they're still like, I still feel included in it because I can follow the conversation, or it might be half in Māori, half in English, and I understand what's going on. I've definitely had those instances where someone's been kind of like, learn your language, whatever, and that just really
Is that just for te reo, or is it a wider?
No, I've felt that in the tokelao space as well.
Yeah.
I would say probably more so in that space because I grew up more around it. So because I've had that language experience on my Pacific side, I think I carried a lot of that to my Māori side. And I didn't necessarily grow up with that. But yeah, I carried that into both spaces. And
That's
then,
fair though.
Yeah.
We do need some like better tikanga, I think, around how we control when people meet each other and establish like I'm going to speak this language. Because like I've noticed overseas on my travels and a little bit here too, like you don't need to always arrive at one language. Like I've met Māori speakers who Māori's just more comfortable for them, and so
Mm.
they don't care if you speak English back. They'll just keep prattling off in Māori
Yeah.
because that's what's comfortable for them, but they're not asking you to join them. And so, like, I feel like in us trying to establish a bilingual, you know, nation, relationship, whare, I feel like Aotearoa in particular is like really set on it has to be this or that. Sorry, this or that. This or that. This or that. I feel like, yeah, we don't have to do that. We could have a lot more fluidity that I think if we had that, it would enable you to not feel like that, you know, because you don't need to do that. And it happens in the Tok community too, you know, like if someone speaks tokelao to you and you answer in English, they don't necessarily switch to English and stay there.
No. Yeah.
We need way less examination of this, way more fluidity, because I think that would be super handy for us, like as a couple. If you were like, one day, if you were like, Vincent, allow yourself to speak Māori as much as you want, and if you were like, I'm gonna allow myself to speak as much English or Māori or Tok or whatever, I feel like that could be really powerful as like a linguistic progression of a couple. Because you and I being here in Aotearoa, where it's like this or that, it means that we inherit that as a couple, but we actually probably don't have to.
Yeah. And I feel like we are kind of doing that already. We use 3 languages in the home, and a lot of it is mixed in with English. And like it just feels normal, but I probably, like I only feel comfortable using it here. No, I like that, and I would love for more people to just be cool with whatever language they get in return, because they might not know where that person's at, and how you respond might have effect for the rest of their day or the rest of their week or the rest, like that might be that. How you respond might be the difference between them carrying on with their language or being like, nah, that's like, I've had enough of this.
When we first met, were you like, my partner must learn Tok? If that partner does not learn Tok, that is not the partner for me. Like, did that thought ever occur to you? Because like, it occurs in Māoridom.
No, I thought that that's how you would feel.
About Māori?
No, about me.
You learning Māori? What about me learning Tok?
No, I didn't feel like that. And that's based on how much I know. And even if I was proficient, I would not expect someone that wasn't Tok to have to learn it because I know it. Like, that's unfair. But even if you were Tok and didn't know, I still wouldn't put that on you because I know what it feels like not to have the language. So no, but the thing that I really love is that you've, even though your language is Māori, you've just put in so much effort and time into learning Tok, and because you already have the Māori language and there's a lot of similarities there, you've picked it up really quick. And I think it just makes me feel really proud that you would even want to do that. Like, that's really beautiful. I would never expect anyone to do that for me, but you did, and that's really lovely.
That's a really cool thing, and can we unpack that a little bit more? You mentioned that you wouldn't expect me to learn Tok because you felt like that could be an unfair ask. I know from my work with lots of families that one parent will decide, we're going to be a Māori speaking household, and just command it, just order it.
Yeah.
And just set about doing it. And there'll be another partner who's like less keen. It doesn't mean that they don't want to, but I think that's more an expression of their like frustration I think they just sometimes feel like this is a really massive ask and you're not accommodating me enough in this choice and in this decision that you've made about my home and my family. So like when you mentioned that you felt like it would be unfair, can you unpack that a little more for me? Because we're asking a lot of ourselves in this, and I would love for people who listen to this to be able to unpack that too. So what part about it makes it feel unfair?
I feel like it's a discussion that needs to be had, an agreement as a couple to make. And you could maybe compare it to something like a financial decision. Like, I'm going to blow 30K on a car. And you're going to help. Like, this is our joint money, but we put this in our savings, but I've made the decision for us to have this car. And
it's a bread and milk sports car.
Yeah, it's a 2-door
that you don't need.
drop top. It doesn't fit a car seat. But and I've made that decision for us. And then I would say, like, I want to go on this language journey. Do you want to join me? And it's okay if you don't, but this is something that I've decided for myself. I think not only is it discussions that you should have really early on in your relationship, like, I'm sure if I had said to you, oh, I don't want to learn te reo, like, maybe you might be okay with that. But if I was like, and I don't want my children to learn because then I'll feel left out. Like, these are all sort of things you want to know early on, because then at least that's giving you, it's giving you some deciding power for yourself. Like, is this something that I want for my future? Yes, no. Is this a relationship that I want to be in, knowing that my partner does or doesn't want something? And that's how I feel about it. It's a decision that I make for myself, and including you in it should be your choice as well.
That's a really good answer, because I feel like a lot of couples don't have that.
Yeah, everyone should have their choice to do what they want.
They just command it. Having said that, like, it would also be true, I think, on the opposite end, that it's everybody's choice as to how they participate in this, but it's also important that they can't shut down other people's want and need to do it, because in my field of work, it has shown me, like, there will be one person who's like, this is happening, I don't care what you think, and then the other person goes, I don't want any part of this. And I feel like that's them at their wits' end, and while they should have some authority over their linguistic decisions as well, I think that they if that chat was had up front, it would be that compromise that would be really important. Like, if you had said to me, I don't want to learn Māori, I would be like, okay, that's cool. If we have kids though, we are gonna be a one parent, one language household, and you are gonna have to be cool with that. And if you were like, no,
Really?
then that might have been a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's really important that I'm able to give this language to my children. So if you were like, no, I don't want it anywhere in the house, then and if that was your initial philosophy, then I would have been like, oh. If it was the philosophy you arrived at after I'd been shoving it down your throat for 4 years, and saying you're not doing this enough, you're doing a crap job, like hurry up or whatever, that would be fair. But that wouldn't necessarily be you saying, I don't want it because I don't want it. You're saying, I don't want it because this is too hard.
Because the way that you're doing it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, this doesn't work. Yeah.
Do you think that you as a teacher in the classroom with students, would you say that there is no room for compromise, and the way that you're teaching is the only way and they need to learn it this way? And so maybe couples assume that that's what being a teacher is like, so they take those things from the classroom and put it into their relationship.
Yeah. I think if you've got a couple set up where one of them is teaching the other, then yeah, I reckon that like you can pretty quickly, I think anyway, go down the road of like the mansplaining, that kind of thing. And I'm sure I do it on occasion, but it's not what I want to do. Can I ask you my second point? Because I had two things I wanted to ask, and one was about the unfair thing. The second one was you mentioning that you were like super proud that I had learnt some tokelao, and I feel the same, about when I hear you using Māori, and like it's such a cool, awesome feeling. And I wanted to ask, like, do you feel proud because of the same things that gear your comment about unfairness? Like, do you feel proud because I've done the unfair thing, or is it something else? You're like, wow, that's unfair to ask you to do that, but you did it, and that makes me really proud. Or is it something else?
Kind of something else. I think it's because I never asked you to do it, but you went and did it anyway. That's really beautiful, and it makes me feel really special. I remember catching you a few times, like reading children's books, and then like each time you were reading it through, you were like picking up more words, and you were like, I finally know what this book is about. And I think it was like about a turtle or something. And you were and you looked up like the tokelao dictionary. You found writings from my great grandfather in Tok, like all out of love, and that made me feel really special and proud to be with someone that would be willing to do that for me. And that
I feel proud when I hear you using te reo, because I know how hard it is. Like, I just know how much work that takes, because I've done it, and so I'm like, whoa. And the thing that I think is so cool is that you're learning. Like, I was in a class where I had time and access to resources and other people and a teacher, and I had all this stuff around me, but mostly I had time. I just think it's really cool when I hear you using the language that you've picked up, because I know that you've done that like real organically, because we're really time poor people. We don't have time for a class. And in New Zealand we tend to think, like in Aotearoa, we tend to think a class is everything. Want to learn reo? Go to a class. And in actual fact, learning the class is like, it's at some point necessary for most people, but it's actually not even half of the work. The real big core part of it happens when you leave the classroom and you start making actual habitual linguistic change. And so when you start doing that, I just go, this is awesome.
When you were asking me about the pride in you learning the language, why did you want to learn it? It's
Māori or
reverse it, Tok.
Tok. I feel like everyone deserves access to their linguistic identity. So that's just a fundamental belief of mine. And I don't think I can be a good partner without entering into a long-term commitment to learn as much of those languages as I possibly can. So that's just a belief that I have. Like, I don't think I can be a good partner to you without giving it a good shot.
Do you feel teary?
No.
I did a little bit.
No. I've got hay fever from the cat. But yeah, I just think like it's a massive part of an identity, and I just think it's really important. So I also know that I might not be able to acquire tote to the level that I have Māori, and that makes me like a little bit sad. But I still want to learn as much as I can, and I want us to progress together. And I also want you to know that if you decided tomorrow I want to become really proficient in tokelao, that I would want to like join you, like you're joining with te reo, and you get a double banger because te reo is your whakapapa too, you know.
I mentioned earlier about having those conversations early so that you know where each other are at in terms of what they want in the relationship, especially with language. What about someone that might be listening right now and maybe have been together for a while and have a proficient speaker in a language and the other person's learning? How would you have those conversations after being together for a while in a, I don't know if safe is the right word, but in a way that is not going to make or break you?
Yeah.
Because you might not have even thought to have those conversations back then. Like,
I reckon you're right, and I like most people don't.
Yeah.
I think it's just because it's my job. I think the most important thing is this, and this is assuming you're in a good communicative relationship. Like most people actually just suck at communicating, so they can't communicate about anything well, which means when you start talking about the language you're using to communicate, it's going to go even more haywire. So, but this is assuming like you've got a couple that can communicate like reasonably well. I think it honestly starts with like, this is something that's important to me, like this is really important to me, and this is what I want to do for me, this is where I want to get to, and this is how I think I might want to get there in terms of my language use. This is what I would like for my kids or my family, or, and it's really, and just reiterating that it's important to yourself, and then asking that person like, can you please come along with me? It's going to take work, you know, on your part, and I'm going to be really appreciative of that work. But I think that's the first thing, like asking, because most people don't ask. Like someone will go off to like a 1-day workshop or something, come back and be like, this house has got to change. And as soon as you do that, like, you know, your partner who you're meant to be equal with is gonna potentially, like, they're either gonna be like, hell yeah, or they're gonna be like, whoa.
I wasn't there.
Yeah. And then it becomes like, it can become quite like negative quite quick. And then the kids too. You know, the kids are like, I don't want to do this, or this looks hard, or, you know, I feel like you're putting this pressure on me to do it, and I can already see that you're commanding me, but you're not going to do it. That's the other one, is talking to kids about your, you know, if you are particularly teenagers, going to ask them to do something, is to kind of like go along with them and you know, actually ask them. Because most people just walk in and go, this is what's happening. Because they can walk in and go, clean your room. But you actually can't walk into someone and go, you're going to communicate differently from now on.
Yeah.
Like it actually doesn't work. And so you have to tow people along a little bit. With younger kids, you can usually get them involved by just playing, you know, a game. You know, just like we did with the yellow car. You know, 1 point for yellow car, 2 points for whakaaomarama, and we had 3 kids in the back after 10 minutes playing whakaaomarama.
Yeah.
You know, like that took less than 5 minutes for that to take off, and then they're in, you know. But it's with teenagers, it's a little bit different, spouses a little bit different. So but yeah, that conversation's super important, and it needs to come with even if they rebel straight away, you can't get angry about it.
Do you think it's okay for someone to be like, this is what I really want to do, and I would love for you to join me? How would you respond if they were like, that's not for me right now, but you go do you?
Cool.
Yeah.
one parent, one language is the name of, that kind of household. All around the world, millions of bilingual families, multilingual families are raising their kids where they've got one parent speaking just one language, another parent speaking another language. They have a language that they share for themselves, but they're not necessarily using that with their children. But if you were like, it's not for me right now, I would just take on the responsibility of it being my, that's my job. And that's because it's important to me. And so I'm going to put in that effort. We'll speak, English to each other, but also respect that it then, becomes your job to provide let's say, for example, English, so that child's English skills therefore become your job, and that's still work. Because, we want our kids to be multilingual. So that's still a lot of work. And I've halved the amount of exposure to English now through my own. So, yeah, so respecting it still. But it's a fully normal, typical thing for bilingual families to do. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Tū Kapu Tū Kōrero. Let us know what you think. You can find us on socials, give our stuff a like, share it with your lovers and friends, and check out the links we post to topics we might talk about on the show. As always, we love hearing feedback so long as it's based on a platform of high and reciprocal mana. Approach us as your mates sitting around the coffee table at our house and not as experts. As always, a big shout out to te Matawai and ata, without whom this podcast would not have been possible. Te Matawai, ata, tēnei māua e mihi atu nei ki a kōrua. We are so excited for episode 4. It's our first guest epi, and we're going to hear from some people who have way more experience than us with other languages in the home. We cannot wait to share it with you guys, so stay tuned. All that and a bag of chips on Tū Kapu Tū Kōrero.